If there's one system that needs another fan translations video on the channel ASAP, it's gotta be the PSP. Not only have multiple games in that old video now got either official localizations or superior patches on other systems, but also because the PSP won a recent poll I did in a community tab by a landslide. So we're going to cover more PSP fan translations that you can play in English right now. Anyway, hi, I'm Milla, usual rules apply, please like, comment, subscribe, algorithm boosting stuff, etc, and so on and so forth. Let's get straight into it. One of the most famous Japanese exclusive PSP RPGs is Fate Extra CCC, the direct sequel to Fate Extra, a JRPG localized by Axis Games in 2011. Fate Extra is widely considered one of the PSP's JRPG hidden gems, due to its unique rock paper scissors battle system, badass soundtrack, and its deep world building from the widely popular Fate franchise. Fate Extra CCC, yes, I'm pronouncing it that way, not CCC, is set on the far side of Fate Extra, the world that this Fate timeline is set in. Every character that featured in Fate Extra returns in this game, telling an alternative story to the prior title. This includes new challenges, new servants, and new sides to the many Fate characters that fans know and love. CCC's gameplay improves on the original by emphasising exploration, via removing time limits, adding more save points, and many more things. Marvelous published Fate Extra CCC in Japan in March 2013, cementing its status as one of the last notable PSP JRPGs ever made. Xseed Games, the North American publishing arm for Marvelous USA, declined to localize the game due to its late release. In December 2023, fan translation group Iwakura Productions published a highly anticipated English fan translation patch for Fate Extra CCC, filling in a highly requested localization gap on the platform. This patch took a decade to release due to the massive volume of the game's script, as well as related technical and logistical challenges, as multiple contributors had to take over from the original team. This is a classic example of how persistence and motivation significantly impact whether an English fan patch for a text-heavy video game, such as an RPG, ever comes to fruition. Moreover, the patch installer also comes with an improvement patch for the original Fate Extra, which subtitles all the audio in the game, correcting terminology in line with the Fate lore, among other things. This project is a truly impressive achievement that's worth celebrating. With Fate Extra Record, the long-awaited remake of Fate Extra coming in 2026, it's possible that a remake of CCC will follow up later on, and realistically, that's the only way Fate Extra CCC will ever return in an official capacity. Therefore, if you're interested in playing this cult classic PSP RPG, especially if you become a fan of Fate Extra Record, you'll have to play this patch. One of the greatest positives to come from niche franchises and obscure developers exploding in popularity is greater awareness of their unlocalized back catalogue. This applies to the Like a Dragon series, also known as Yakuza. Over the years, Sega developed 4 spin-offs in the Yakuza franchise, 2 of which, the Black Panther duology, remain exclusive to the PSP. Co-developed with Sin Sophia of Star Savvy fame and fashion dreamer infamy, Kurohyou, Ryuga Gotoku Shinsho, aka Black Panther, Like a Dragon New Chapter, and Kurohyou 2, Ryuga Gotoku Ashihara Hen, aka Black Panther 2, Like a Dragon Ashura Chapter, follows the adventures of Tatsuya Ukiyo. Ukiyo accidentally kills Naoki Toda, a famous Yakuza, in a brawl. He's captured and forced to enter Dragon Heat, an underground fighting circuit. Soon enough, he discovers Toda may actually still be alive and that he faked his death, and there's a Yakuza conspiracy he must work to unravel between matches in Dragon Heat. Black Panther 2 is a direct sequel that takes place 2 years after the previous title. In this game, Tatsuya must band together with new fighters to save Dragon Heat from a new emerging threat. Gameplay wise, the Black Panther games are broadly similar to the mainline series, but have key differences to account for the PSP's limitations. Firstly, combat focuses on one-on-one brawls rather than open arena combat. Free roaming exploration resembles the original PS2 versions of Yakuza 1 and 2 with its fixed camera angles, rather than everything after Yakuza 3. Finally, the cutscenes are delivered in the style of graphic novels, rather than fully rendered cutscenes like literally every other game in the series. The reason this duology never left Japan was never publicly confirmed. However, the state of both the Like a Dragon series and the PSP outside of Japan at the time these games came out are most likely why. This spurred fan translation group Team K4L to publish full English patches for both titles. Black Panther 1's patch took over 8 years of work and an initial leak of an unedited version before finally releasing with a full edit on the 15th of August 2023. Black Panther 2's English patch began development in February 2021, but thanks to the team's existing experience, work on Kurohyou 2 progressed much more smoothly, with Black Panther 2's English patch debuting on the 7th of January 2022, with further patches since. Which is really ironic that the sequel is actually more definitive than the patch for the first game when they both came out. That's really weird. Will the Black Panther duology ever return? Sadly, it's very unlikely. In a January 2023 interview with The Gamer, Hiroyuki Sakamoto, the chief producer at Ryuga Studio, was asked about reviving the Black Panther duology. He said, "At this point in time, we have no plans for it. We developed it for the PSP, and they were very good titles for the PSP. I think if we wanted to develop something, we're not really looking at the past, we're looking to the future, and we think that we want to put our efforts and our priorities at making new titles for Like a Dragon." Therefore, if Ryuga Studio ever returned to Black Panther, it would be many years down the line, most likely with the Kiwami treatment. But given Sega's recent desire to include the likeness of real people within the Yakuza games whenever possible, even though it's not necessary, has caused a ton of problems, but especially their willingness to depict a sexual predator within Yakuza Kiwami 3, ironically undermining the legacy and ethos the Yakuza series works so hard to build, them not returning to the Black Panther duology is probably for the best. Therefore, if you're a fan of the Yakuza, aka Like a Dragon series, and seek to experience the Black Panther games, these English patches are your only option. One of Bandai Namco's most famous Japanese-only franchises is the Idolmaster. This series originally began in 2005 in the arcades, but has since grown into a massive multimedia franchise. The Idolmaster franchise encompasses anime, manga, and countless video games that never left Japan. One of these, or technically 3 games, but we'll get to that, is the Idolmaster Shiny Festa. This is a trilogy of 3 rhythm games set in 765 production, the agency to which the player belongs. Only a limited number of idols can join the agency, with each group of idols forming one release. The release names are, in order, Groovy Tune, Funky Note, and Honey Sound. Upon their release in October 2012, these games became instant bestsellers in Japan, diversifying the Idolmaster games well beyond their simulation origins. Although Bandai Namco did not localize the PSP versions, they did localize the iOS ports of these games in April 2013. However, Western fans and critics did not like this release due to all its predatory microtransactions, a hallmark of the Idolmaster series. And this dislike was very much the correct response against microtransactions. It's possible this negative reception put Bandai Namco off localizing most other Idolmaster games going forward, including the PS3 ports of these games, which it should, because gacha mechanics that involve real money are always bad and should be criminalized. Fortunately, the existence of an official English translation meant fans could take this translation and backport it into the original PSP releases for these games. With the iOS versions of Shiny Festa long discontinued, this trio of English patches are the only way you can experience the Idolmaster Shiny Festa trilogy in English outside of Japan. So if you're interested, you should check these games out. 2025 marked the return of one of the most beloved JRPG franchises among retro gamers, Konami's Suikoden series. Suikoden 1 and 2, HD Remaster, Gate Rune and Dunan Unification Wars took the JRPG world by storm. What many people don't know is that this remaster pack was itself based on a Japanese exclusive PSP re-release of the original 2 games. In 2006, Konami published Suikoden 1 and 2, an enhanced compilation of, well, Suikoden 1 and 2. It wasn't Konami's last PSP Suikoden title though. On the 9th of February 2012, Konami published Genzo Suikoden Sumigareshi Hayakinen no Toki in Japan exclusively for the platform. Known as Suikoden The Woven Web of the Centuries in English, this game takes place concurrently in a different universe from the mainline Suikoden games. You play as a swordsman, whose name you can change, who's thrown back 100 years into the past alongside his friends, Biura and Zeno. The trio must gather enough heroes to defeat the Centennial Monster, a powerful being who attempts to destroy the world every 100 years in predictable JRPG fashion. Gameplay-wise, Woven Web is a halfway house between the mainline series you know and love and Suikoden Tier Crisis, a DS spin-off you probably know of and do not love. Exploration and battles are turn-based like the mainline games, but many elements from Tier Crisis return, or not. This includes the omission of the series' signature Rune and Mark of the Star systems, alongside a complete total absence of duels and major army battles. Players also must collect the 108 Stars of Destiny differently within Woven Web. They must travel through time to find the stars so they can learn the skills they need to defeat the Centennial Monster in the present day. There are only 18 playable characters, significantly smaller than every other Suikoden title ever. Although aspects of Woven Web are divisive, this game was received more positively than Tier Crisis, and was a fine way to bookend the Suikoden series, especially in Japan, because of course, as we all know, it came out nowhere else. Woven Web remains the last original Suikoden game that's not a remaster, remake, mobage, or pachinko shit as of autumn 2025. In March 2021, fan translation group Twisted Phoenix Game Translation, who primarily operate in the German fan translation sphere, led a team of fan translators to localize Woven Web for Centuries from Japanese into English. They also published a walkthrough for the Stars of Destiny alongside a full HD texture pack to celebrate the game's release. These allow you to experience Woven Web for Centuries in English, in HD, on native hardware and emulators in the best way possible. Due to Konami's reluctance to localize niche games alongside its late PSP release in general, a localization for Woven Web of the Centuries in the PSP era was wishful thinking. But now that Konami have revived the Suikoden franchise as a new flagship, a Woven Web remaster is now possible, and may happen in the future. But until then, this English patch is your only option. This next title is one of the most unique releases I will ever cover in the fan translation series. This is a visual novel, but most PSP visual novel fan translations that aren't available officially are for anime spin-offs. This is something that I'm not super interested in or that knowledgeable about, so I can't really decide which ones to cover among the seas of other games. If you have any suggestions, let me know down in the comments below. Therefore, I decided to cover one of the most interesting homebrew ports for the PSP instead. Introducing DIVI-DEAD, a 1998 horror eroge originally localized into English by Himeya Soft officially back in the day. Yep, this is the archive website for the game on the Wayback Machine, which is truly wild. In this game, you play as Ranmaru Hibikiya, who transfers to the prestigious Asayo private school to solve a mystery at the request of his uncle, the school's dean. But it soon becomes clear all is not well, with various assaults, misconduct and other disgusting, triggering things I cannot detail here. Ranmaru must uncover Asayo Private School's horrifying secrets, even if he's further traumatized in the process. DIVI-DEAD was well received both in Japan and overseas back in 1998, and was many Western fans' first exposure to horror eroge, well before Clock Up started releasing their stuff in the West. In October 2008, fan translation group Tales Translations released an unofficial port of DIVI-DEAD on PSP, PC, Sega Dreamcast, and the original Xbox. Yeah, that's a lot of platforms for a visual novel, including on the bloody Xbox. They reused the official English translation alongside a brand new Spanish fan translation. It's unclear whether DIVI-DEAD will ever return officially. This is because developer Seizeware has long gone out of business, and it's unclear who owns the copyrights to their works nowadays, but given some of their other classic works, including Eve Burst Era and Desire, have been remastered on consoles and PC in Japan, maybe DIVI-DEAD will return someday as well. In the meantime, if you're over the age of 18 and you're interested in playing adult visual novels on your PSP, consider checking out this homebrew ROM in the privacy of your own home. In the late 2000s, virtual idols became the latest trend in Japanese otaku media. Hatsune Miku, the world's most famous virtual idol, debuted on August 31st, 2007, becoming an instant hit. Her popularity exploded, bringing both herself and the entire industry to the world stage, not just in Japan. Hatsune Miku's legacy also includes her pivotal role in developing a new subgenre of rhythm game, Vocaloid games. This led to Krypton Future Media, the company that birthed her and many other well-known Vocaloids, partnering with Sega to start a rhythm game franchise featuring their characters. The Project Diva franchise became a huge hit thanks to its great range of tracks and challenging yet satisfying rhythm gameplay. Sega debuted the series on the PSP with Project Diva in 2009, before releasing and then re-releasing Diva 2nd and Extend. The original PSP games are quite simplistic compared to later titles, but each PSP release and re-release incrementally improves on the last. Exact differences will take a whole video to explain in their own right, so for this video, I'll stick to the Ingus patch history. The original Project Diva has two Ingus fan translation patches. The original patch, done by F Shadow and Roland47, did not fully translate the game. This led to WordGim, a third translator, continuing where they left off and released the definitive patch for the game in 2020. They later launched a 60 FPS mod for emulation fans in September 2023. This is the definitive way to check out the original Project DIVA. Both versions of DIVA Second, both the original release and the expanded version, which is titled Project DIVA Second Sharp Okaidoku Ban, have English patches. The English patch for the original version of Second is no longer available online, but apparently came from a source that usually focuses on Spanish fan patches. However, the patch for the Okaidoku Ban version is the one to go for. Second Sharp also runs better technically than the original game, so if you're playing Hatsune Miku Project DIVA Second for the first time, just get the updated version. Project DIVA Second Sharp also released alongside the third DIVA title, subtitled Extend. Extend is the most refined of all the Project DIVA games on the PSP, so it lacks a re-release on the platform. Therefore, there's only one way to play this game in English, namely the full English patch, which came out in 2012 by a fan translation group led by CodeStation, a moderator on the hacking site wololo.net. This site is well known in the Vita homebrew scene. And that's just the English patch. There's also French, Spanish, and surprisingly Finnish patches for this game. Yup. You can play this game in Finnish as well, which is really cool. The reason why the Project DIVA PSP games never left Japan is obvious: licensing issues. The Project DIVA franchise was still new and experimental back then, so it made sense for Sega and Krypton to restrict the game's licenses so they could only sell it in Japan. Moreover, the PSP's declining sales outside of Japan would have made a Western release commercially unviable, especially as Vocaloids themselves were also quite new. Of course, Project DIVA's rising popularity in Japan would lead Sega and Krypton to localise all games in the Project DIVA series, starting with DIVA F on the Vita and PlayStation 3. Given that later Miku titles are the definitive way to experience Project DIVA, there's no real incentive to go back and play these earlier titles, unless you're determined to explore where the series began. If that's you, these English patches are a great option. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video, which will hopefully age much better than the last PSP fan translations video I did. Have you played any of these translations? Any others I should cover in the future, especially the anime visual novels? Please let me know down in the comments below. Please like, comment, subscribe, Algorithm Booty Staff, consider becoming a channel member if you can afford to and want to do so, etc. Thanks so much everybody, have a lovely day. Bye bye.